So this video is going to be a little bit of a different video, but it's something that a lot of people have been asking me to talk about. And I talked about it briefly on both the Analog Allies and Game and Talk podcasts, but I understand not everyone watches those. They're not on this channel, although you should be watching them. There's good content over there that I definitely suggest you check out. But I, of course, am talking about the BeatEmUps Wood Nintendo Direct situation and kind of the initial thing that happened, what happened after that, and then the fallout from that. Now, my relationship with Wood is very different than I think pretty much everyone that's watching this video has. You know, you might watch him as a content creator, as an entertainer. You might love his stuff. You might hate his stuff. You might be somewhere in the middle with it. But I'm someone that's been friends with Wood for, probably 10 years now. You know, thinking about where I lived when I first started talking to him, and actually a channel that we had with a couple of other people. It's probably been about 10 years. And unlike just watching somebody's video, I kind of know the individual behind the camera, but when the lights are off and, this, that, or the other. We've been through a lot of different situations together as friends, mostly good, a few bad, a few disagreements on stuff like that. Like, it happens in any sort of friendship or anything like that. But Wood's video, obviously, he made a video talking about the Nintendo Direct situation. And I guess I kind of got to talk about like what I'm actually talking about, because there may be some people who aren't familiar with this. Essentially, what had happened was Wood did a podcast, his own podcast, and within that podcast, he said that he knew about a Nintendo Direct happening in the month of July. I believe this podcast took place in June, early June or something like that. And he listed some games that he expected to be at this podcast or at this Nintendo Direct, this, that, and the other. And then the podcast came to a close. And then with that, in his video, he shows that he actually recorded after the podcast ended. Yeah, I just made it up. I wanted to do a social experiment with it to see how rumors and stuff start to fly around. Now, you got to remember, this podcast is on a secondary channel. It's not on his main channel that has, nearly 2 million subscribers, even though your boy can't even crack 1 million. Like, come on. I get it. He's a little bit more family friendly than I am. But, this is a side channel, a sort of throwaway comment. And because of that comment, this spread all over the internet. It was everywhere. People on X were talking about it, or Twitter. YouTubers started making videos on it. Websites started writing articles on it, and all of this sort of stuff. And I didn't realize that was said on the podcast until I started seeing people talk about it on Twitter. And I'm like, what the hell's going on here? So as you could see in his video, I DM'd him. I'm like, well, go on. Well, what's this Direct thing? And he's like, oh, how'd you hear about it? And I was like, oh, people are talking. Oh, who's talking? And like right then and there, I knew that there was something going on with this. Because, to be asking me questions when you are the one with the alleged information, I knew something was kind of up with it. And I was just kind of like, okay, you're doing something. I don't know what it is. I don't know if I agree with what you're doing, but you're doing something. So I went and told, because Spawnwave and Nate the Hate were like, what's he talking about? And I basically told them, I said, I'm in a group chat with them. I basically said something along the lines of, I'm not going to be talking about it. And I probably wouldn't if I were you guys either. And they understand that if I'm not going to talk about something that, websites and all these other YouTubers are talking about, then there's probably a reason why, sort of a gut feeling with this thing. And then, of course, Spawnwave didn't talk about it either. And to me, like, I get it. Like, Spawnwave and I, we're not the biggest fish in the world or something like that. But a lot of these YouTubers that talked about it, and a lot of these websites that talked about it, know who we are. Know at least one of us. Know at least Spawnwave. And I found it very interesting that none of them picked up on the fact that John and I weren't talking about it. Like, why is that the case? If it's a YouTuber, okay, that's kind of one thing. But if a website writes about it, that's the easiest pickings for a YouTuber to have, because now the onus doesn't necessarily, come back to you. You're like, oh, well, this was reported on the website. They're the ones reporting it. What do you want out of me from this? Like, I'm just simply talking about what they're saying and sharing my opinion on it. And so as time went on, I kind of got clued in to what was going on. And honestly, I kind of forgot about it. And like, this was like, weeks after we had that initial conversation. And obviously we talked between, that time frame, but we didn't talk about that because I was just kind of like, oh, whatever. And I was watching all these people just making all these videos and stuff. And I'm like, I don't know if that's the best idea there, Chief. I don't know if that's the move you should be doing with this. And of course, the direct happens. It's a partner showcase, which, I mean, really, let's be real. Wood's little fake direct would have been a better idea. And then obviously none of that stuff came to fruition. And he caught a lot of heat for that. And, in the days leading up to it, we did talk about it. And he clued me in about the video he was making. And he sent me some clips of it. He didn't send me the whole thing, but he sent me some clips of it. He sent me like the intro of it. Kind of laying down the groundwork. I think he did like tinker with it a little bit more, at least from the editing standpoint. I don't know. I could be wrong on that. But he kind of, showed me these clips and he was like, well, what do you think? And I was like, well, I'll be honest. I think it's good. But I also am someone who kind of understands the situation, and there's going to be blowback from this. There's definitely going to be heat from this because people got so emotionally attached to the things that you were saying. And one of the main things that I see a lot of people bring up is trust. No, we can't trust him anymore if he's just doing these throwaway comments, we can't trust his leaks and stuff like that. And that's kind of an interesting thing to me because he's not really someone that really delves too much like into leaks and stuff. Spawnwave, myself, other YouTubers, we definitely talk a lot more about that sort of stuff. He does more like guides, like 10 eShop games that I'm playing and game reviews and game impressions and stuff like that. He's never necessarily been known to be a leaker. So for this to kind of happen, and I guess people kind of assume that because he is a larger channel, he might have access to insider information more so than, other people who are not. And I think that's a fair assessment. I think the main thing I take away from this whole thing is, like, I'm not mad at him because, it's got nothing to do with me. But I can understand why people are a bit upset about it because, you essentially have this thing that was created, maybe even not necessarily really by him. Because if you watch the video and you watch the terminology he used, like, it was a lot of loose end terminology. It was a lot of stuff that, you can take to interpret the way you want it to. It was more so the people talking about it that created sort of the hoopla and the hype around it. There's always going to be negativity in a situation like this. People are going to be upset. And if somebody says to me, oh man, I'm so mad at Wood, like, I'm never going to watch his videos again. I'm never going to trust him again. I would say, hey, you know what? I understand. That's your prerogative. That the beauty about YouTube is, and some people don't understand this, you don't have to watch people that you don't like. You don't have to watch people that don't entertain you. You don't have to watch people that don't inform you. So I wouldn't blame someone or like be like, oh, well, I can't believe that. For feeling that way or needing some time off or not wanting to watch his channel for a little bit, coming back and seeing what he was doing. But I think my beef with it, as far as people's reactions to it, are the people who clearly didn't watch his video explaining everything and, seeing the recording of where he literally ended the podcast being live and then made the comment to, Fried Biscuits, Fried Biscuits, if you're watching this, I'm sorry that I scared you at too many games. He was in the room when Josie and her friends were filming, and I busted in there acting like a robbery was going down, and a lot of her friends didn't appreciate it, but I mean, I laughed. And her boyfriend laughed too. So, I'm just here to pop the boys. But it seems like a lot of people didn't watch the video. They just saw that he made a video talking about it. They're like, oh, you just made the whole thing up. You thought you had something and now this is your pivot thing. And it's like, well, no, it was actually planned the entire time. And this isn't the first time that something like this has been done. John Cartwright did something pretty similar. His was mostly focused on Twitter and basically made a Twitter account, created leaks, and then when those leaks didn't come to fruition, he was like, yeah, I did it because I wanted to see what would happen. I think this is the same sort of thing and just taking it to the next level. And I guess, people didn't get mad at John Cartwright when they, found out that it was him behind the account when he came out and said it. So I guess kind of like, why is it different if it's someone that you do know from the jump, But on the other hand, I do understand why people would be upset. I'm not going to tell you how you should feel. At the end of the day, your feelings are your feelings. I do suggest you watch this video, though. I'll link it in the description box down below. It kind of gets into the psychology of things and stuff. It's a very entertaining watch. But, there's always going to be heat. There's always going to be blowback from stuff like this. It just kind of comes with the territory. But, yeah. I mean, I guess that's really all I have to say, I guess the main thing to take away from this is if there's a big story and a lot of people are talking about it, and for some reason, John and I aren't, John and I aren't, there's probably a good reason for that. And I'll leave it at that. Let me know what you think about Wood's situation in the comment section down below. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Be sure to like, comment, and share. Hit the bell as well. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.